Remember that I told you about that?
Oh, yeah.
This is a beautiful example of what we know about mind chemistry. At Donner Lab, some 15, 20, 25, maybe 30 years ago, it was believed at that time that methionine was a very great aggravator of schizophrenic syndrome. It did not have any action on normal people, but on schizophrenics it made them more difficult to handle and more difficult to assimilate behavior changes. And so I made up some S-adenosine methionine, as I remember, radio labeled, and we had access to the PET scanning. And we got 5 schizophrenics from Mendocino Hospital and 5 normals from the lab there, which was a bit harder to do, but we did get 5. And gave them enough activity of the S-adenosine methionine that we could get good PET scans just above the earlobes across the brain. And we ended up with 10 pictures, 5 of them from the schizophrenics and 5 of them from the normals. And all 10 pictures were totally different from one another. There's no connection of distribution that you could find that would lean toward one or lean toward the other of the 2 human groups. And every time people came in from the East Coast to visit the lab, we'd have these 10 pictures on the wall. And we'd ask them, who do you think, which of the ones are the normals and which of the ones are the schizophrenics? And we tallied the answers, and there was absolutely no total random response. But the fascinating thing is, about 3 or 4 months later, one of the schizophrenic patients, volunteers, came in and talked to my friend, who's the one who set up the experiment, and he saw the 10 pictures on the wall. And he said, "Oh, are those the 10 pictures you took of us?" No, one picture from each of you. "Oh, but then these, I'm one of these 10, right?" He said, "Yes." Tony said, "Yes." He said, "That's me," he said, pointing at that picture, and he was right. He picked his own brain scan out of 1 chance in 10 if it's random, but he picked it correctly. So Tony very casually said, "Hey, you're right, how'd you know?" "Oh," he said, "you see this little almost star-shaped thing down here in the lower right corner? I see it all the time." And so this is the kind of information that you cannot get from animal studies, but it's also it emphasizes the absolute ignorance we have as to the function, the mechanism of operation of the mind.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question about the Dragonfly series of compounds. I haven't been able to find too much information on it, so I've only learned of it recently, but can you, in your opinion, tell me the most desirable ring substitution pattern to go between the rings? And has anyone or yourself experimented with a amino X type derivative of that with the oxalone ring on the side?
Could you repeat that slower, please? I'm really not trying to make fun of you. It's just that the sound is a little difficult.
Yes, I was asking about the Dragonfly compounds. What you would say the most desirable substitution is to go in between the furin rings, and has anyone experimented with an amino X type side chain to go on that compound?
What kind of
amino X side chain?
To my knowledge, the amino X side chain has not been put on the dragonflies. You have what I call the pseudo-flies, the flies, and the dragonflies. This is a chemical game of looking at the what I call the dirty pictures, the molecular structures. You take an aromatic ring and you attach a dihydrofuran on one side, and the dihydrofuran the other way on the other side. You have, in essence, a molecule, that central molecule with 2 rings fused on each side of the center, and that looks like the wings of an insect. So these were called flies, and there are what would be the ordinary fly is the dihydrofuran. In the para position, there's a bromine or a cyanide nitrile group or a methoxy. And in the other position of the chain, there is either a phenethylamine or an amphetamine. A little bit difficult to make. Some of them are rather effectively quite potent. They've been studied in Purdue, in Nichols' lab, as the relationship to various serotonin receptors. And I am personally familiar, Ann and I are personally familiar with only one of them in any depth, and that is the bromo fly, 2CB fly, I should say. It's a compound, the bromine in the para position. The 2 dihydrofurans are opposite, inverted, so the oxygens are para to one another, and the chain itself is the phenethylamine. active at about 8 or 10 milligrams, I think, level.
Absolutely
orally active.
divine. Wonderful. Anyway.
I won't go into the sex thing.
No.
Okay, fine. If you aromatize the rings on the side, the amphetamine chain ups the activity by a factor of about 10. A dosage of the corresponding 2C B fly would be active at about maybe 1 milligram orally. If you aromatize the two rings and make the corresponding but the furans themselves, we call these dragonflies because they are active at about 100 micrograms, but not orally. A milligram has no effect orally, but by parenteral injection, active at about 100 micrograms. So the compounds could be quite interesting. Something as was mentioned with the aminorex extension on the chain. To my knowledge, it's never been synthesized.
Thank you.
I forget which side that came from.
Hello.
Over there.
Oh.
Hi. My question is, do 2CB, 2CI, or any of the other 2Cs show up on a standard drug test?
I got 2CB, 2CI, and
Show up on a standard blood test.
show up. Oh,
Urine test.
I haven't the slightest idea. That Sasha might have an idea.
How do you define a standard blood test?
No, not a standard a standard drug test, like urine test.
Drug test. It depends when, I think.
No, I don't even know if they have been standardized for these drugs, the 2CB and 2CI.
That's probably.
I have to admit I'm innocent as to how the two compounds are metabolized. I've never bothered looking at my urine when I was first working with them. If they are metabolized salicylic acid, which is a very reasonable metabolic end product, I would say would not show it up at all. I don't know what a standard urine test I presume you had in mind. Mm-hmm. The amounts that would be present would be very small, and I would wager that most urine tests are standardized toward things that are most apt to be seen, such as marijuana or amphetamine or methamphetamine or cocaine or opium, things that you can get color tests for. And the color test is a presumptive test, and if it is negative, there is no drug thought to be present. If it's positive, it really justifies a more thorough and a more exacting analysis, because a positive color test can be to another compound entirely than what you think it may be due to. So a presumptive test, a color test, a test of that type is only if positive, justifies going to the expense of a more exacting test. I really cannot conceive of a color test that would show positive with 2CB or 2CI in urine, because the amounts there are so small.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, there's been some speculation online, that may be dubious as to whether there's psychedelic aminorex or piperazine analogs. I'm just wondering if you have any information as to, if that's a possibility. If there are, psychedelic piperazine or aminorex analogs that could be synthesized.
Are you saying piperazines?
Yeah.
And hydrazine, I think.
No, it's piperazines,
Hydrazine in place of the amine group?
No, I was saying, there's been speculation online that there's possible analogs of aminorex or piperazines that may be psychedelic, and I'm wondering if you can validate that, or if you know of any possibilities.
I have to answer the question in a general sense. There are many speculations as to varieties of simpler molecules. Say, you mentioned, I think, piperazines, hydrazines, but also the various benzylamines that are known to be, when substituted, being stimulants. And a lot of these materials, that are psychedelic, are based upon stimulant nuclei. In other words, you have amphetamine, for example, methamphetamine, without substitution is a stimulant, but with substitution it falls into the psychedelic category. And in